Hello everyone, welcome to another VWO webinar. My name is Utkarsh Rai and I take up growth marketing initiatives at VWO. I'll be moderating today's session. For this session, we're excited to host Mr. Jordan Kahn, who is joining us from Seattle. Jordan takes up product marketing at Bizible. Bizible is a marketing attribution and revenue planning platform which helps businesses in building visibility and measuring the impact of their marketing efforts. Jordan has been a part of a double acquisition journey for Bizible, transitioning from becoming a marketer company and now becoming an Adobe company. We welcome you, Jordan. In this session, we are discussing ways to tie marketing attribution with metrics which matters the most, which is the revenue. For any questions, you can kind of reach out to us on Twitter with today's hashtag AskVWO, or you can kind of ask questions to us using the GoToWebinar questions widget to ask us anything. We'll take your questions at the end of the session. For your convenience, we are kind of recording this session and we'll share the webinar resources with you after this session. So you don't have to kind of worry about making any notes or anything else. So let's begin. I would request Jordan to kind of take it over from here. Jordan, over to you.
Thanks, Akash. Happy to be here, and thanks to everyone for spending the next maybe 20-25 minutes or so with me. And of course, we'll be doing questions at the end. So as Akash said, I lead product marketing at Bizible. We are the leader in B2B revenue attribution, and we really focus on providing marketers with visibility into their marketing performance so that they can make smart decisions and power growth. But today, specifically, I want to talk about how attribution fits in with testing and conversion rate optimization, especially at the channel level. And what it really comes down to is what we kind of consider two different classes of metrics. And those are your indicator metrics and your goal metrics. Marketing practitioners, like many of you on today's call, typically operate at the channel level. So whether that's email, website, social, search, events, etc. Marketers think and plan and measure success in terms of their specific channel metrics, and therefore they optimize in terms of those channel metrics. But those metrics aren't what the broader business really values. The CEO, the CFO, and your board, if you have one, they don't really care how many impressions, clicks, comments on a social media post, badge scans, or even form fills that the marketing team generates. They value revenue and ROI. So in this webinar, I'm going to discuss how to tie optimization measurement, strategy, and technology to the metrics that really matter, primarily revenue. We'll walk through real-world examples of decisions made by channel metrics versus revenue metrics, and demonstrate how optimization marketers can increase their value by connecting indicators to organizational outcomes and goals. And while I go through this presentation, I really want you all to think about your conversion rate optimizations and tests, the ones you've done this past year and the ones that you have planned going forward. So again, the major challenge that many marketers face when it comes to measurement is that data is siloed at the channel level, as you can see here. Focusing on engagement without measurement and planning leads to siloed data. Every channel, has its own success metrics that may or may not be aligned with each other or the business and the broader business. And this leads to inaccurate and cumbersome reporting, and ultimately bad decisions, such as what we call random acts of marketing, or misinformed data-driven marketing, which is when you have like the best of intentions, but your data is not there to really optimize your decision making. And ultimately, what it comes down to is connecting all of your various channels. As you can see here, there's just a handful, to revenue. And that's really the role that attribution plays in your MarTech stack. If marketers can align their channels to goals, they can create a marketing machine that enables them to prove impact and improve their impact with every cycle. So you can see here, this graphic shows that planning feeds into engagement, which feeds into measurement and feeds back into planning. This creates a continuous cycle of improvement. So every time you go around, you make your marketing a little bit more impactful, you improve it, and over time you'll develop a really successful marketing machine. So with that, let's get into an example. We ran this conversion rate optimization test maybe late last year or early this year. We ran it for about a quarter in duration, and just FYI, as we go through the data, I can't share real numbers, but know that they're directionally accurate. So you can see here on this test that we were testing kind of that headline on our homepage, so marketing-powered growth versus marketing-powered revenue growth as the headline. So obviously the difference is having revenue there. And so when we ran this test and looked at our data, as we always do, we looked at kind of our standard A/B test metrics that pretty much come standard out of the box with any platform. You can see clicks, and we can specify the specific call to action or the button that we want people to click on. So as you can see here, version A got the most clicks, 300 more, but version B got the most CTA clicks, which is kind of your standard way of determining who the winner is. So you go to your boss and say, hey, look what I did. I generated 10% more CTA clicks. In a vacuum, obviously that's good. You want more clicks than fewer clicks, but that's not going to get you very far. Your boss they'll probably be happy for you. Hey, you did better, but they won't be that excited. You can't take CTA clicks up the chain to the CEO, let alone probably the CMO, especially depending on how large your company is. So let's move into the next class of metrics that we look at. And these are kind of your demand gen metrics. We're looking at net new contacts. And you can also narrow it down to kind of your MQLs or your graded contacts. And then we can layer on segments. So here we looked at kind of our smaller prospects, so SMB and mid versus commercial and enterprise. We can see that version B resonated more with our smaller companies, and version A resonated more and generated more net new contacts in the commercial and enterprise segment. So you can take these to your boss and say, hey, look what I did. I generated about 66% more enterprise contacts because of my test. This is great and more powerful than just CTA clicks alone. But still, as Matt Hines, the marketing guru, says, you can't buy a beer with leads. Lead volume still doesn't impress the C-suite. So finally, we want to look at our test based on full funnel metrics. These are the outcomes that really matter. And you can see here that version A won across both of these since it generated more net new opportunities and generated more revenue. So with these metrics, you take this big revenue increase, 75% more revenue, to your boss. That will definitely make it up the chain. Everybody in the business, from sales reps to the CEO, they all care about revenue. If you can prove that you're making an impact, a revenue impact with your experiments and optimization, it'll lead to really great outcomes. You'll be able to grow your career, your team, your budget. Everything is good when you're able to drive revenue growth. And you can see here that your boss responds with, here's more budget to do it again. Obviously, anything that is growing revenue at positive ROI, your company will want to do. So in the last few slides, I've covered a lot of different metrics, but I just wanted to illustrate kind of how vastly different your test can turn out based on which metric you look at. As you saw here, if we looked at contacts, version B1, but if you looked at a specific segment, version A1, and it can make it really tough to kind of understand which version is better and which one you should go with to optimize. And coming down to revenue really helps clarify the true winner. And so in my example, we used a website test. We tested the homepage headline, but this really applies across all of your channels. So how are you optimizing your webinar experience like this one? Do you send 2 email reminders or just one prior to the webinar? If you're looking at kind of digital ads, do your ads use bright colors? And do those bright colors attract more revenue in addition to just more clicks? That's kind of a testing 101 example. When it comes to content, is writing kind of clickbait articles actually going to make a difference to the business, or is it just going to get more views? And this one is my favorite. Do you post stunts at events just to drive booth scans? Is their ROI going to be positive, and are you going to grow revenue? If you give away a Tesla, or are those thousands of badge scans that you generate just going to be really low quality when you start to follow up with them? And we actually did see someone at a conference this past year give away a Tesla in a raffle or a random drawing. So as you can see, there are so many ways you can apply attribution and measuring to revenue across all of your channels. So of course, this leads to the question, how do you do it? So like most things, it starts with asking the right questions. In this case, it's why are we creating this test in the first place, and what's the ultimate goal? And so again, to walk through this process, we're going to go back to our little architecture framework slide that we really like to use here at Bizible, and frame everything in plan, engage, and measure. So we'll use this framework again. So step 1 is planning, obviously, and here are the questions that you kind of need to walk through. So what's the immediate goal? What are your indicators of success? In our earlier example, it was that CTA click, the request more information or request a demo. That's kind of the action that we want people to take, the immediate action. And some qualifiers for how you answer this question is that it needs to be measurable. You can measure pretty easily how many times people click on that button. Things like sentiment are a lot harder to measure and have the data to back it up. There are definitely ways to do that, but just make sure as you're answering these questions that they are truly measurable. Second, we can narrow it down one step further, is who do we want to take that action? In our example, we wanted to optimize for our commercial and enterprise segment, since we knew that as a business, we were moving up market and really cared more about them. Just as an important thing to note, your audience today isn't necessarily going to be your audience in a year. So it's important to know kind of the broader strategy behind that. And finally, obviously, you need to be able to tie that immediate goal with the ultimate goal. And that, in most cases, is revenue. Step 2 is engage, and this is an area where I think VWO can bring a ton of expertise here. There's a lot that goes into actually launching a test and experiment optimization, but here's kind of the very broad outline. You create your hypothesis. In our case, it was, if I use different headline copy on the homepage, will it increase revenue sourced from that homepage? Step 2 is designing a test, and 3 is launching it. Again, VWO is the experts here. Finally, we get to step 3, which is measure. And here you can see the 3 kind of classes of measurement where we're really connecting those indicators to downstream goals. So first we have the good way, which is list. This is what your data-driven marketers in the 20th century were doing. It's basically asking and answering the question, is there a correlation between your actions and broader results? Are we beating benchmarks that we previously weren't. Two is the better measurement is influence, and this is kind of the measurement of the last maybe 10, 15 years. And this analysis is usually done at the opportunity level. And it's asking the question, are opportunities that are exposed to version A more or less likely to become customers than the other version, so version B or C or however many other versions you're doing? And this is like, was there a touch at any point in that deal? And finally, you have the best way, which is to use sophisticated attribution technology that connects into your optimization software. So that's, for example, the integration between Bizible and VWO. And this enables marketers to directly connect experiments to downstream revenue and do so in a granular and comprehensive way. And I'll show you how we do this at Bizible. So this is a diagram of kind of the back end of Bizible. It's where we get all of our data from. So we connect to all of these, as you can see on the left, from on-site JavaScript that tracks visitor behavior. We have integrations with ad networks, marketing automation software, optimization software, including VWO, and a few others. And we take data from all of these different sources, and we unify and normalize it so that we can create this complete customer journey based on data. And here you can see that at the MQL stage, this person in this account saw version B of our experiment. Since the account eventually became a customer, we can attribute the revenue from the deal back to the touches that led up to it. Here you can see on the bottom, we're using a custom attribution model that gives 20% to the MQL touch. So we can isolate him. We can see here that that this person clicked on the CTA when he saw version B. This will register as a click, a CTA click. He'll be included in an opportunity influence analysis, kind of your better measurement that I just talked about. But most importantly, we can now directly connect him to revenue. Again, we can see that experiment B is associated with that 20% of the deal's revenue credit. And if we look across all of our opportunities during that testing period, so that quarter that we ran that homepage test, and we aggregate all of the credit, so all of these 20% or whatever that number is, depending on where it falls in the buyer journey, we aggregate all of the credit across version A and version B. Using that, we can determine the true winner based on revenue. So we're not saying, hey, like version A got more clicks, or version B even drove more net new leads. We can say, this version drove more revenue, which is the ultimate goal, and therefore is the true winner. So to wrap this up, and it looks like we'll be a little ahead on time, so I have lots of time for questions. I want you all to think about the different tests and optimizations you ran this year. What were you trying to achieve with each of them? And were those success metrics tied to true business impact? And most importantly, could you prove the revenue impact of those efforts? And if your answer is no, think about the reaction you got from maybe your manager or your manager's manager. Was it as positive as you expected? And if you could measure it to revenue, how much better would that reaction have been? Could you get more budget? Could you grow your team? Could you increase your influence within the marketing team or the broader company? When marketers can connect their efforts, including CRO, to revenue, you'll find that you have a much broader impact and can expand your influence in the company. So that wraps up kind of the slides that I've prepared for you. And Utkarsh, that brings us to our Q&A. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Jordan. So we'll be starting the Q&A now, and I see a couple of questions coming, but as usual, I'll start with my own question. So Jordan, you kind of discussed about different questions we need to ask ourselves in terms of setting up or maybe deciding on a revenue model. So once a business have asked themselves those questions about what they want to measure and why they want to kind of measure success metrics using those mechanisms, can you like discuss about what is the easiest attribution model which business can readily deploy without moving a lot of marketing infrastructure at their end?
Yeah, I think for kind of the broader market, there are single touch attribution models that are pretty easy to deploy if you're already tracking kind of your lead source. It's pretty easy to evolve to that single touch attribution based on that touch. But I would argue that single touch attribution models, you really need to understand the limitations of that data set. Because you're only crediting one touch with all of the credit, you're going to undervalue so many of the other touches that were important, or in the case of experiments and conversion rate optimization, you're going to miss a lot of the really important touches of what you're testing, because you're not always testing what will generate net new leads. You might be testing what's best for our open opportunities, or what's our how do we optimize for brand new kind of awareness campaigns, like prior to lead. So the short answer is like easiest to implement without infrastructure is kind of repurposing what you're already doing if you're capturing lead source into a single touch attribution model. But if you are doing marketing throughout the funnel, so from the first touch, even if it's anonymous, down to post opportunity, you really have to be using a multi-touch attribution model. And I think there's a lot of confusion or misinformation around the complexity of implementing multi-touch. It's really not that much more complicated once you have kind of software and systems in place. So Bizible allows you to, in one touch, toggle between 7 or 8 attribution models, depending on your tier, and it's just a matter of toggling between your attribution models. So it's no more work to get kind of more complete and comprehensive data.
That's great. Another question is coming from Eric, and he has a very interesting question that, can I use attribution to track offline marketing?
Yeah, absolutely. Especially in B2B, where a lot of offline marketing is direct mail or events or field marketing or dinners. So at Bizible, we use the CRM campaign functionality to do a lot of offline tracking. So I know here on our marketing team, we're heavy users of direct mail in our ABM strategy, and we're able to easily connect that through our CRM campaigns and track those touch points. When you go to conferences, like kind of another primary offline marketing channel, often you'll collect badge scans or get registration lists from the event organizer, and you can upload those into, again, the CRM campaign, which is what those CRM campaigns were designed for. They're not designed for tracking digital marketing, but they are for kind of list upload type things, and you can track those pretty well. Does that answer your question?
Yes, I think it pretty much does. Another question is coming from Thomas, and I think you went through on your presentation about how we can kind of track revenue at different part of your planning process, right? And he basically want that, if we can kind of share a practical example or a use case on terms of how we can kind of do that in action, then that would be really helpful.
Yeah, so how does revenue and measurement feedback into planning is a great question. So I'll use an example that isn't necessarily CRO, but is about proper budget allocation. So at the end of the year, we look at all of the events that we sponsored and do a revenue and ROI analysis. Excuse me. And based on that analysis, we can use that to inform our event plan for the future year. So we can say, hey, this event, event A, didn't drive any revenue, but we spent a lot of money on it. But event B drove a ton of revenue, and we spent a medium amount of money on it. Let's reallocate all of the budget from event A that didn't drive any revenue and double down on event B and go bigger, maybe get a bigger booth or send more people there and drive more revenue that way. So that's a pretty basic example, and you can use that kind of across as an example across all of your channels. So another one would be we really want to target CMOs in 2019. Let's look at all of our campaigns in 2018 that targeted CMOs and look at the channels and sub-channels that we ran those on. And we can see that when we targeted CMOs on LinkedIn, we were able to generate 3x the revenue as when we were trying to target CMOs on Facebook. And perhaps that's a matter of better targeting capabilities on LinkedIn or a better context, where CMOs who are on LinkedIn are thinking about their business, while CMOs who are on Facebook are trying to distract themselves or waste a few minutes. And so we could say, using that analysis, so taking our measurement of our past campaigns and say, in our 2019 plans, let's reallocate that budget to LinkedIn, and then within LinkedIn, look at which campaigns are the most effective and try to replicate those with our new budget. So again, that's another example of how great measurement feeds into good planning, and then those good plans feed into good engagement because you're engaging those CMOs where they, based on the data, want to be engaged.
Got it. Got it. So another question is coming from Robert. He basically wants to understand how Bizible works. So his question is that, how does Bizible track each visitor? Is it a cookie-based tracking, or how do we get around cookie blockers, etc.?
Yeah, so part of it is here, and let me go back to way too far. How Bizible works, and yes, part of it is cookie-based. So we have our JavaScript on site that cookies anonymous users, but once they fill out a form, we tie that cookie data to a Bizible person record, as you can see here on the left. We're creating this Bizible person record, which identifies the person, and then all future interactions we're able to track back to that person. So I guess in today's age, where people are a little bit more cautious about cookie data and more aware, that does bring tracking challenges. But through the Bizible person ID, we're able to tie a lot of those touches back to the person. And then a little bit more about how Bizible works. You can see here we're tying directly into kind of those primary B2B ad networks. So Google AdWords, DoubleClick, Bing Ads, Facebook. We have to have a LinkedIn integration too. It's just missing from this view. Chat is increasingly important. So we're plugging directly into a bunch of chat technologies and capturing those interactions Obviously, A/B testing is huge, and kind of the latest thing in revenue attribution, and you'll notice I say revenue attribution instead of marketing attribution, is that we're also bringing in sales activity. So a lot of our outbound sales, people who are calling and emailing our prospects, we want to track those activities as well and bring those into the customer journey. This brings a lot of credibility to marketers who typically own attribution, because it shows that there's not a pro-marketing bias. We want to be as channel agnostic and people agnostic as possible. We just want the data to show what's truly happening. So the more we can bring in kind of a comprehensive look of all of the ways that we're engaging with our prospects, the better our data is going to be.
Okay, that sounds fair. Let's take one more question, and this question is coming from Kate. She basically want to understand that, is there anything more we can do apart from attribution, or is attribution a point solution to everything, or is there anything else we can kind of go beyond the attribution part?
That's a good question. To go beyond attribution, a lot of companies that are kind of pretty advanced in their kind of digital transformation story are bringing attribution data into a data warehouse where they can combine it with ERP data and kind of more robust financial data, and doing some very advanced analysis, typically through like a BI tool like a Tableau or a Domo or any of the BI vendors. So that's kind of more advanced. And then I guess less advanced than attribution is, as I said, a lot of kind of your marketing automation will have like lead source tracking, and are really good about helping you analyze what's happening at the lead stage, and less good about connecting that to revenue. So if you're talking just about connecting activities to revenue, attribution is kind of that solution. That's precisely what attribution is designed to do. But there is, I think, as the question implies, there's a whole spectrum of measurement, and attribution is just one part of that.
Awesome. I mean, that's mostly all the questions we had. There are a few questions in terms of, understanding how kind of VW and Bizible kind of, work together. So basically, the idea is, whatever data you kind of get through your experiments in terms of, understanding how many clicks, how many people are kind of, segmenting, or kind of, have the entire experience of the variant which you kind of build for them. And you kind of pull all that data and kind of put into Bizible. And you kind of see that, how all of these things are kind of working well in terms of, the entire user journey, and how which customers are kind of, getting converted after seeing which variant of your test and things like that. So yeah, that's how basically, data kind of flows from VWO, and you can use all that data and put it into Bizible, and Bizible kind of, talks about how those visitors are kind of, converting, and how you kind of, track all of that and kind of track back it to revenue. So that's how you can kind of use both these integrations together, how you can use basically both these tools together. And then that's mostly it. That's mostly all the questions we had. So thanks a lot, Jordan, for taking out the time to come here and share your experience with us. Thanks to all the attendees for attending this session. We'll be coming back again very soon with another pressing subject and insights from the world of conversion optimization. Till then, keep optimizing.
Thank you.